For most people, Hawaii is associated with white, sandy beaches, luaus, tan surfers, and a laid-back lifestyle. But outside of the popular tourist destinations like Honolulu, Oahu, and Maui, there is an island that most people don't even know exists. Located 17 miles off the west coast of Kauai lies the island of Niihau, better known as the Forbidden Isle. The island has mysteriously been protected from outsiders since the 1800s. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The island of Niihau might have the same beautiful, sandy shores as Hawaii, but you will never get to touch them. The island has had little to no contact with the outside world, and today it looks as though it is stuck in time. The islanders there live the same as their ancestors did hundreds of years ago, hunting and fishing to survive. The only reason it has become preserved is thanks to a woman named Elizabeth McCutcheon and a strange deal made in the 1800s. Elizabeth McCutcheon, better known as Eliza, was born in Scotland in 1800. She grew up and married a ship's captain, Francis Sinclair, in 1824, and the two shared 6 children. After the birth of their 6th child, the Sinclair family decided to set sail and begin a new life in New Zealand. Little did the family know that this decision would change the course of the future of the family forever. The family arrived in New Zealand in 1841 and settled in Pigeon Bay, where they set up a rather successful farming operation. Although the family was now involved in the farming business, Francis was a sea captain and used his skills to sail the family's farming supplies to trade. 5 years after arriving on the island, Francis and his eldest son set out to sea, where they were met with a great tragedy. Their ship sank, taking the lives of everyone on board and resulting in the loss of all of their cargo. After losing both her husband and eldest son, Eliza now had nothing to show for the years of work she had put into their farm in Pigeon Bay. With 5 children to look after, Eliza knew she couldn't give up. She turned Pigeon Bay into a thriving farm, once again married off all of her children, and decided the family would move to Canada. In 1863, the family set out once again, this time for Canada in hopes of starting a new farm. Upon arriving in Canada later that year, the family was disappointed when they reached Vancouver Island. The land was still mostly wild and underdeveloped, not the ideal conditions for establishing a successful farm. While Eliza was debating on moving to California, she heard about a promising place, the Hawaiian Islands, then known as the Sandwich Islands. It was then that she decided to relocate the family to Hawaii and meet with King Kamehameha V in hopes of purchasing Niihau Island. King Kamehameha V agreed to sell the island to the Sinclairs for $10,000 in gold in 1864. However, before he gave them full control of the island, he requested that the family protect the island and its residents from outside influences. The Sinclairs agreed to the terms and began their new life on the island. Eliza was considered a chiefess by the island natives, and the family did all they could to help those on the island. The Sinclairs now owned Niihau Island as private property and were able to separate themselves as much as possible from the ever-encroaching United States. They took King Kamehameha V's request seriously and in the 1930s announced that Niihau would be closed to all visitors entirely. This was to keep the island safe from the spread of diseases like polio and measles, as well as to maintain the native Hawaiian culture of the island, which is known as kahiki. Today, the island is still privately owned by the Robinson family, descendants of Eliza Sinclair and her family. They have managed to uphold their ancestors' pledge to King Kamehameha V and have kept the island private and unaffected by outside influences of the modern world. They still live off of the land and using old skills like hunting and fishing in order to survive. The island is also one of the only places in the world where Hawaiian is the dominant language. Bruce and Keith Robinson told ABC News, "We've tried to maintain the request of the king when it was turned over. We maintain the island for the people and continue to work it as he had. Being separated from the world has its perks. For the most part, life on the island has been described as being incredibly relaxed and harmonious. While the island still doesn't have running water or electricity, the inhabitants sustain themselves by collecting rainwater and using solar panels. Almost every house on the island has a solar panel of its own. Being away from the hustle and bustle of a big city and technology, life is slow-paced. Not everyone can come and go as they please on the island, but the island's inhabitants can. The Niians aren't ignorant as to what life is like on the mainland, and many split their time between Kauai and the Forbidden Island because there is more work on Kauai. This makes determining how many people live on the island difficult. In a 2010 census, it was estimated that 170 people live on the island, yet that number is believed to be closer to 70. Although living on the island might sound like heaven on earth for some people, the inhabitants are still controlled by a series of laws created by the Sinclair and now Robinson family. Supposedly, those who call Niihau home aren't allowed to have guns or alcohol in their possession and are required to go to church every Sunday. Furthermore, one former resident claims that men are not allowed to have long hair or earrings and that breaking any of the rules can result in eviction from the island. Considering how isolated the island is to the other parts of Hawaii, it's necessary that some provisions, such as food and supplies, are brought over. Weekly deliveries come by barge and contain goods except for items that are banned, such as alcohol, tobacco, and guns. Interestingly enough, while the islanders may not be allowed guns due to the island's position, the U.S. military has set up a defensive operations base. There, they employ several of its inhabitants. There are mixed claims about what it's like to actually live on Niihau. Some sources compare it to a utopian society, where everyone follows strict laws and cultural beliefs, while others say otherwise. Peter T. Young, the former Department of Land and Natural Resources Director of Hawaii, explained it best. He claims that Niihau is isolated for the rest of us, but it's not an isolated island for them. They don't look any different. They don't act any different. They live in a place that the rest of us have a very limited opportunity to see. Both the Robinson family and those living on the island agree that they want to keep their close-knit community far away from the eyes of tourists and other Hawaiians. Unauthorized entrance by people who don't live on the island is strictly prohibited, and there are consequences for anyone that tries to make their way onto the island illegally. However, getting to the island is difficult enough, so people intruding on the island isn't a major concern. While visitors can't venture deep into the island, some tours reach its shores. For a high price, you can take a private helicopter for a half-day tour around the island. A full-day guided hunting safari costs around $1,700 per person and grants broader access. Because the population is so small, the island's flora and fauna thrive. Endangered species like the monk seal have found refuge here. Their population continues to grow, with around 35 seals and 10-12 pups born each year. This is yet another reason why the island remains heavily protected. Niihau shells are unique to the island and used to make traditional shell leis. These leis are crafted by island residents and sold throughout Hawaii. They vary in price depending on the shells used, which differ in color and texture. Welcome to Hawaii, where 6 beautiful islands of paradise await you. If you arrived in 1950 when this photo was taken, you might have seen a scene like this, where native Hawaiian dancers perform the traditional hula. Hula dancers sway their hips to tell a story. Hula was developed by Polynesians who originally settled on the Hawaiian Islands. It's typically performed alongside mele, traditional chants or songs. Here, a woman is seen making leis circa 1954. She threads carnations together to create flower necklaces used to greet visitors. The lei tradition, introduced by Polynesian voyagers, involves flowers, leaves, shells, seeds, feathers, and occasionally animal parts. When offered a lei, it must be accepted and not removed in front of the giver. If you didn't live in Hawaii, then the next best thing was to go there for vacation. That's exactly what these folks are doing at the Kailua Kona Hilton Resort in 1975. The resort has inevitably been renamed, but you can still visit the location. 1975 was also the year of a devastating natural event. On November 29, a 7.4 magnitude earthquake rocked several Hawaiian islands, triggering a tsunami that killed 2 people and left a lasting impact on the region. After World War II, Hawaii emerged as a prime vacation spot. A 1938 Vogue editorial helped expose the public to surf culture, even before it became mainstream. This exotic destination, though a U.S. state, felt foreign and adventurous, as photos showcased tourists enjoying the tropical paradise. By the 1960s, surf culture had exploded. In 1963, surf legend Nick Beck was photographed riding the waves. Born on Kauai, Beck later became a school principal and worked to preserve the natural beauty of his homeland. Beyond the beaches, Hawaii is home to many sacred sites known as heiau. These spiritual locations range from simple rock formations to elaborate temple-like structures, some dating as far back as the 13th century. Unfortunately, many were destroyed in the 19th century when missionaries suppressed native Hawaiian religion. On Kauai's north shore lies the Kalu Paua Hula Heiau, steeped in legend. It is where Chief Lohiau was buried after dying from heartbreak over the goddess Pele. His spirit was honored in chants and rituals by Pele's younger sister. The site is also dedicated to Laka, the goddess of hula. The Halaki'i Pihana Heiau State Monument in Maui includes 2 Luakini temples near the mouth of the Lau Stream. Linked to influential chiefs, the site was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1985 and is believed to date back to the 1200s. Far from Hawaii, in Antarctica, Deception Island was once considered a safe haven for explorers and whalers, but its hidden volcanic threat erupted in 1967 and 1969, destroying research and oil stations. Today, only research teams and occasional tourists visit. Hashima Island, or Gunkanjima Battleship Island, was once the most densely populated place on Earth. Known for coal mining, it was abandoned after petroleum replaced coal in the 1960s. The crumbling concrete buildings remain, and tourists can now explore part of the ghost island. Italy's Poveglia Island has a dark past. Used as a plague quarantine site in the 1300s, it later became a mental asylum in the 1800s. Stories of abuse and death circulated, including rumors of a doctor throwing patients from the bell tower. The island closed in 1975 and remains off-limits to the public. Brentford 8, an island on the River Thames, once housed a rowdy pub called the Three Swans. By 1812, a local resident bought the island, demolished the pub, and planted trees to hide its past. Today, it appears as nothing more than a green patch of trees from the city.